So the recording is live. We are having the SUSE QE Tools workshop at the beginning of March 2022. As on every first Friday of a month, we want to walk over the roadmap. We'll present what we have done within the last months, what are our current plans, and what our future outlook. For that, let me share. So this is where we are with our workshop topics. Today we have the SUSE QE Tools roadmap. And for that, the link that I will use, going from the top, how we work. Here you find the backlog. First, I'm starting with the closed within the last time period. I'm just adjusting that to say the last meeting we had roughly 30 days ago, because it was actually at the end, at the beginning of February. So let's take a look at tickets in the last 30 days. And what we can see just at the number of tickets that we have exceeded our normal mean value. And I would say the main reason is also the last week, because during the last week, what we said is that we set an internal goal to say, okay, let's try to reach a goal to be able to resolve 30 tickets, which is more than double the amount of tickets which we normally achieve within a week. And if we can do that, then this week we can have, let's say, a SUSE QE Tools internal hack week. You know, there's the SUSE hack week, and we wanted to use that opportunity to say you can also work on. It's not as liberal as the SUSE hack week, where you can effectively choose virtually anything, but here we wanted to say, like, okay, let's look into more innovative topics and maybe something that you want to get done for some longer time and wasn't immediately on the backlog. So this is what we had the week up to now. But as you can see, in before, we still managed to exceed the expectation for the number of tickets. Yep, thanks guys. For the link, there's also a description on the wiki of our extraordinary hack week. So within these tickets, what we have done is we have 13 OpenQA feature requests. Let's start with them. There is a request which is open that for VMware, I think it's version 7, VMware 7, that one doesn't ship anymore a default VNC server to the SUSE automatically. So this is why we are looking for alternatives. And what we did is as a precursor task, this timebox task, a research task, like, okay, there is one proposed way what could be done over WebSocket connection. So we were looking into that, and based on that, we updated our plan. We updated various tickets. We came up with an idea how to follow up with, and also made suggestions of how we can continue extending the tests so that they are still representing real customer use cases. We did change the coloring of failed modules to make it more obvious that they actually fail. Let me see if we can show you a live example. So we have one pull request here showing the old state. You can see this test overview page where you have a soft failed and failed jobs. And you can see that this block here shows which modules are actually failing. And what could be confusing is that, well, there's the green background and like blue text, so maybe it doesn't look like really there's something failing. Instead, we just changed the coloring, no change in functionality. This is just color for the same thing, is that we made it more clear with a red color and a thicker border, that regardless of what this bubble of the overall job results tells, the module is still failing. Okay. We did that, and this is also related to that we can now more commonly see that the job result can be changed, for example, with false results. So in that example, for testing purposes, you can see there's a little comment. and this result was overridden, but it doesn't change the fact that the module still failed. Then OpenQA GRU log is difficult to read. Okay, that's a bit more internal. So GRU is for executing background tasks. We found actually that we have an IKVM backend, which in Audience is still there. And we now marked it properly as deprecated, same as we did for AMT and before. We have automatic review checklists on pull request. We did that especially for our project. So you could say this is like development internal, but we also proposed that already, or I proposed a pull request, just waiting for your feedback in Audience History OpenSUSE. So for example, here you can see in code review, an automated action detects that I'm doing certain changes and says like, oh, there are files matching the backend. So please also consider running manual verification tests so that the reviewers can pay attention and also the reviewee has that as information. And I have an equivalent proposal for the test distribution, Audience History OpenSUSE, where I think this can also help to prevent that reviewers overlook something. So in November of the last year, there started to be problems with a download speed on workers, and resolved that problem. Meanwhile, it was actually a switch misconfiguration, like a hardware network switch. But that also led us to ideas of like, okay, how can we better investigate such issues? How can we detect such problems? So what was done is that now the bandwidth data for worker cache download is published over the InfluxDB route. And okay, this is actually nothing which I can show here visually, but there is a related ticket that we want to make that more apparent in the monitoring data. So in our Grafana dashboard, we can also see that, and we can have alerts on that. So if there's any worker that is like super slow to download, then we would see. Based on some regressions that were introduced both by pull requests by ourselves as well as external contributions, we realized that using Perl's signatures is a good idea. And I just thought that Yanis, I don't know, I'm not sure if Yanis is here, but he also created a pull request for the main test distribution, also Audience History OpenSUSE, doing something like that. And simple static code checks like that can prevent regressions. We made BotNG proper public open source project. So you will find where's the funnel link? Here. So there's this repository on OpenSUSE that we call the project QMBot. So you can also gradually replace the naming within. Of course, it doesn't really stand on its own that much because this is linked to the QEM dashboard, but the QEM dashboard was already published as open source in before. So yeah, it should be default to have proper public open source projects. This reduces costs, and also it actually makes our job easier thinking about something like disaster recovery scenarios or moving to the cloud, where we also relying on these components. And of course, then in public cloud, it's easier to just access this public resource than having something within SUSE, which maybe in a disaster might also not be available. So it has multiple benefits. You might know in OpenQA we have an investigation tab, and that one is shown now also for incomplete jobs and not only for failed jobs, because also for incomplete jobs, it could be that there's a regression which was introduced and you want to check how and when it was introduced. Of course, for an incomplete Normally it's not a product regression causing that, but really a test regression or infrastructure problem. But then still, it helps to see the Git log and such. We show the dependency graph for clone jobs. Now that one is also important because you might remember that there is, let's see if this job still exists. It should. So previously the dependency graphs would only appear in the latest job within a scenario. Here you can see this dependency graph, but actually there are newer jobs already in the scenario. And what you can do, if you follow that chain, then on every single job within there, you can actually see that there is a tree. This ticket is related to a saga for easy multi-machine handling, where we want to treat multi-machine tests as first-class citizens and not just, some kind of addendum which is not fully supported. Okay, so much about feature request. That's actually a smaller block, from the number. That's 13 tickets versus 85 in total. We had some organizational where, we needed to handle some dependencies or some pipelines in the middle. And we had 1 bugs in existing tests. This is actually the OpenQA and OpenQA tests, where we found a problem in the shutdown module. There were 17 bugs which we worked on. So blue means high importance. We had flaky coverage. We had a problem with the job age. Well, that's what actually due to this network download speed regression, which I mentioned. There was a problem just recently that a job details page actually failed to load completely. So thanks to Tina, she quickly found on which place we can actually optimize the SQL query to avoid such a scenario. So this is a great thing. And yep, that's about it. So, and now for the blank, meaning that I should rather look from the project perspective, because what we have covered is mainly the OpenQA project. And in other projects, for example, in QA, what we have done there is that we found there was a lapse move due to these in the SUSE office. The SUSE office in Nuremberg is moving, and due to that, in a first step, the so-called SUSE QA labs in Nuremberg they were disassembled and machines had been moved to another server room. And in the process of doing that, there were actually only very minor problems, but also what was found is that, some machines are not properly maintained. So what we found is that we needed to upgrade some machines which are not actually directly related to the OpenQA infrastructure, but we are kind of adopting these machines. So this is what we did there. Then this is a change which I want to highlight: the OpenQA review report. These remind in linked tickets if there's no action within the tickets, but there are tests reproducing the problem. Okay. But there are some cases where maybe you don't want to have that reminder. We can debate about that, but what we have included is a configurable no reminder message pattern, meaning if you put in some special wording, like I can show you in the example here, there's a test failing and there's soft failed here, and the soft fail reference has a word won't fix. Okay, so that one had been put in by the test maintainers into the text. For that special text, Then this was the request from Martin Duscher from the QE kernel team. Then we actually do not put a reminder comment into the bug anymore. So in here in the bug, you see that the last reminder was from 1 month ago. In the meantime, we should have multiple reminders because the default reminding period is 14 days. But this one does not receive reminders anymore. Then we had the OpenK infrastructure. So this was, as you can see, again, quite a big list of things breaking, going wrong. That one was this old download speed problem, which, as we said, was fixed by a firmware upgrade of network switches. That one had been haunting us for nearly 3 months, but I'm happy how we resolved it and learned a lot from that, and also learned about inconsistencies in who maintains machines and the network infrastructure. So yeah, more work for us, but at least it's clear now who takes care of something. Let me see what else. My backend, we have some email reporting. Yeah, this is like related to SUSE Nuremberg QA Labs move. We actually have another improvement because our production OpenK SUSE DE ARM machines are OpenK Worker ARM 1, 2, and 3, and they are unstable. They crash sometimes multiple times per day. We have an automatic recovery for that, but sometimes even the automatic recovery over IPMI is unresponsive. So what we needed to do that is someone manually powering off the complete device and switching it on again. And now what we use is network controlled power outlets, and these they are instrumented over telnet and an expect script, but they're rather old and a bit clunky. But this is included in the CI pipeline. So, we try to recover the machine directly. If that doesn't work, then over IPMI. If that doesn't work, then we power cycle over the PSU. We worked on the security of our internal infrastructure management repositories. And what else? Some machines were not accessible. Yep, so that's it about it. Any additions or questions regarding the tasks that we have resolved?
How do you end the Wont Fix on the
The Wont
software?
Fix on the software messages.
Yes.
What about it?
What does it need to have this Wont Fix?
Right. So let me show you the change in OpenQA review. So what was done is that we have a pattern, simple pattern, which is either the word no reminder or won't fix. I recommend to use no reminder because I consider this is more clear. If you say in your test, for example, you say record soft failure and then no reminder BSC 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think this is more clear than won't fix. Won't fix was just the initial request from the requester. Additions to that? Anton or someone else?
Yeah, it's just a bit strange that you add actually two labels for the same purpose.
Yeah, right. So again, I recommend no reminder. I mean, we can also say, please change all messages where you want that from won't fix to no reminder. It's an easy change. So for now, we did like that.
And this should be in the comment.
This should be like, you know, when you have a record soft failure call, yeah,
Okay, okay.
in the test code. So instead of record soft failure, just a bug, you write record soft failure, no reminder, and the bug. Because, you know, record soft failure could actually be any string. We just demand within our CI of OpenSUSE that there must be a bug ref. But it could be text plus the bug ref.
And it bugs only the Bugzilla.
No, that's also for progress tickets. That's the same. Well, no, it's actually, you know, wherever record soft failure is used. Okay. Yeah, so much about the resolved tasks. Now let's go to the rest of the backlog. So we have a top level view with our sagas. We have 3 sagas, so I commonly like to have 3 sagas, not more. We had sometimes 4 sagas, which is like our top level tickets. So sagas includes epics, and epics includes the single task, and the single task then take, you know, a range of days. In time frame for tickets, expect days, maybe weeks, and sagas take weeks or months. Epics take weeks or months, and sagas takes multiple months or maybe even years. And we have by the going by the age of the ticket, that's just like the ID. The oldest one that we have is scale out, redundant, load balancing deployments of OpenGA, easy containers on Kubernetes. For a long time, we had the scale up story included, where we needed to handle bigger storages, being able to store more results for more products in our instances. This one is also scaling, but this one is scaling towards more deployments, more machine, and of course, we would include containers in this story. This is also related to plans for disaster recovery, running OpenGA in the cloud, which would be able to take over in a kind of disaster, something like 3 maintenance updates within hours or days of the production instances that we have. This also includes actually the challenges that come with moving labs or moving to different locations, like having machines now in Prague that are connected to the central infrastructure in Nuremberg, something like that. Then we have the SUSE maintenance QA workflows with fully automated testing, approval, and release. So where especially for the maintenance workflows, we are working on mostly features there to ease the life of the daily reviewers. And the third one is about multi-machine tests as first-class citizens. So we will come shortly to really interesting tasks that mostly Marius is working on regarding how to more easily handle multi-machine tests. The dependency graphs is one example which I showed. Any questions on the level of sagas? Then let's dive into the individual stories and the specific tasks that we work on. So our current backlog, we were hitting this artificial limit which we imposed on ourselves of 100 tickets quickly in the past. So there I'm really glad that especially in the week before the current one, we were able to just work down the backlog on some minor tasks, get them off our plate, because otherwise we would be overwhelmed with work and it wouldn't be so easy to lose the battle anymore. We are at 88 tickets, so that's okay. The target that I have for myself is something around 80 tickets, because there's always something coming in. So like I would say as a mean value, 1 or 2 tickets per work day that come in of some some problems, some observations, some support requests, some new ideas which we need to try it. And you can imagine 1 or 2 tickets per day that can grow quickly if we are not careful. What is currently being worked on is that we have 2 machines for OpenQA SUSE. They're specifically for SAP application testing, but they can also be used as general purpose OpenQA workers. Yeah, and one challenge is that they are in Prague, so they are a bit remote to Marius, I think you are. Yeah, Marius, may I ask you to mute?
To what? Sorry.
Please mute, because you know, I could hear a keyboard.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
And as you are the moderator of the meeting, I cannot mute you. You have to mute yourself. Okay, so yeah, that's the challenge, and actually the bandwidth between Nuremberg and Prague is abysmal. I don't know why that is, so we still need to find out why my private home connection is better than the connection between Prague and Nuremberg. Yeah. Hopefully it's just some configuration problem. Let's see. Then yeah, another one is that after module failure, the console is broken. This is related to loading snapshots. So, you know, you have one test module that's failing, and then you roll back, and then the next module after that somehow is behaving different than if it would start when there would be a green module in before. That can happen because maybe the machine is still busy. So yeah, Chris is working with that. Then we have, I would say, you could call it the bug report, but it's certainly also related to that saga of multi-machine tests as first-class citizens, so that it's clear that there are less surprises, basically. Yeah, then we are working on the dependency handling for the requirements that we have with our tooling. The monitoring for worker-specific bandwidth, we have already seen the task in before that was finished in the last period about adding the data to make it available to gather it into our monitoring platform. And that one is now including the monitoring plus the alerting. There is a report about the needle editor, which has an ambiguous black border, and it's not clear, is that part of the screenshot, is that part of the needle, is it part of a display artifact? Then optimizing the API route, because, you know, if you would do that, please don't try it. But I'm sure that many people have already run into the situation. If you just query something like the API jobs route, but there are also others, then there's no limit in jobs. So that could take multiple minutes to conclude, to show visually like all the jobs or something, or it's trying to show you all the jobs. It can time out or something like this. So yeah, that's a thing to do. And that's related to the QA Labs move. The QA-net, QA SUSE, you can see also in the number that we have for the ticket that this is an older and longer story. QA-net is a critical component running DNS and DHCP and the iPXE server and such. So we have to be a bit more careful and bring that onto a properly maintained state. Yeah. Then I would like into the workable and the new tickets. So, for example, there is, let's see, there's a problem with some hardware on red current, a power machine. The hardware was replaced, but still there were problems. So we have to look into the details of what can be done. Is that some kind of sector alignment problem? Something like this, I don't really know. We have flaky code coverage. That's what we do consider quite important. You know, it's just our internal CI and just our unit test, but still that can also explain or could maybe explain problems which we have in production when using such consoles. And it's important to have a reliable and consistent code coverage so that we know what is covered when we do changes, and we know what is not covered. We know what needs to be done with manual testing and stuff. There's a proof of concept replacement OSD in cloud with running test that sounds quite similar to other tasks which we did have in the past. That one is of having specifically OpenGate. We already had that. I mean, we know now how easily we can set up an instance of OpenGate in the cloud, and I mean, it had been possible for years and had been used by people. The challenge is like, how can we most easily replicate what is currently running within SUSE within a cloud in case of something like a disaster happening, and then we need to recover from backup and connect to the various components. And we want to go further with more frequent deployments. We already progressed a lot, so now we have the daily. Do we have that? Do we have the daily deployment for O3 and OSD? I think we do. I will need to check again. The next step would be to really have a continuous deployment, and the idea was that we start with O3 workers. So that meaning that whenever there's any change merged, then we make for the next OpenGA run, make that available. We have some review day tickets, half of it had been finished already. And then there's this epic to use feedback from OpenGA Investigate to automatically inform on, for example, write on a GitHub pull request when we saw like, okay, there's a likely test regression, likely it's this pull request. Or we write on open tickets to say like, hey, maybe there's a sporadic issue and we also saw it elsewhere and such. And also to weed out automatically fails test. If we see some problem, let's say a sporadic problem, that we can actually handle that. So, you guys had some great ideas how we could apply retrying automatically. Think of a test that is really stable and now it fails, and we find out by automatic investigation that it's neither a product regression nor a test regression, which likely explains that. So why not just retry that job automatically, but still record somewhere that this action was done. Also, related to that, I would see whenever we find a new issue where it does not look like a known issue, does not look like a test regression where we could immediately put the comment on the GitHub pull request, we could then, for the cases which are left for investigation, we could send a message to guys that remember that is already the case and is still working. If you're connected to for example, the SUSE internal ISC server, you can see messages of the unreviewed test, but I know that it's not feasible for most of you. So we have to think of more modern solutions which are more convenient to you. For example, some kind of email that ends up in a Slack channel or something. So about the new tickets. Yeah, we have some monitoring related problem. We have OpenGA Worker 14 and 15 where it's part of the OpenGA SUSE already, but it has some limitations. For example, one would be that the developer mode failed. So we need to find out where that problem comes from, certainly because of the remote connection, different network and such. We have to investigate and fix the high instability of worker 4 and 5 still, so that they are ready to be used within production. We had some incomplete test runs on S290 with some backend problem. Maybe we cannot really fix the specific problems, because of course they can also reoccur. It could be that a remote instance is not reachable, but what we do want to do is help with the feedback to the test reviewers to make sure that, you know, there are multiple VNC servers here. Like there's a QEMU VNC server, there's maybe a VNC server provided by an intermediate hypervisor. Maybe there's even sometimes a third VNC server within the SUT. That can be confusing to the unknowing newbie to a domain to select, so which VNC server is that now and who should do something about that. Okay, this is where we can improve. I mentioned VMware VNC. So yeah, after the initial research, now we have to try it out and have a Spike solution, have integration tests of how we could integrate our VNC module with VMware's VNC over WebSocket. Related to that, before we introduce further regressions, the VNC module is a key part of OS audience, but actually the test coverage within the self-test of OS audience, it's not great. It's below where we want it to be, so that we would feel confident when extending, for example, for VMware. So this is why we plan to extend test coverage there as well. Also related to that, when we do changes on the backend, often it's helpful to do, or it's necessary to actually run that with real production hardware. But of course, that means that we need access to some maybe production hardware and don't we want to interfere with the production tests. So the idea is to use the custom OpenGL backend command, which we already have for quite some time. You know, you can override the backend that is running, the engine, that you could replace the call to ISO to video with something else, like a call to a container, and we could use that to leverage testing. Anton?
Not directly related, but because you are mentioning a lot of VNC related tickets,
Yeah.
I want to ask. So recently I was on one call, not directly related to OpenQA, but there was security experts in this call from our company. And when I said that VNC, that OpenQA workers allow unattended access via VNC to every machine, they were like super shocked and said that this should be fixed immediately. This need to be changed. We will contact Ralph and so on. And I just wonder if someone reach you out about this. Do you have it on your plate, or
yeah?
And generally, what do you think about this thing?
Right. So let's start from what's technically possible within the tooling. So yeah, it's possible to start that with a password and think about some kind of stronger encryption or some kind of tunnels, and passing the credentials from the worker so that we can access the machine. Also, that is possible. Of course, then it would make it the external debug and investigation harder, because somehow we need to make the authenticated users able to access the same credentials as well. We need to ensure that the development mode and such works. So it's possible, but currently it's not planned to do that. There are alternatives where you can say, well, we have a segregated network, and then we can say, well, you would need to enter that network, and only if you have access to the network, then you would be able to control certain things. But then we also have to keep in mind that what we are controlling here are test machines, which are, you know, they're running a bare SLAS installation, so there's no critical data on it. And also from these machines, you would not have an easier job to reach any other critical components. And Are we aware of that? Yes, and we are also in discussion with the according people. The last state that I know was that Nick has proposed some ideas and asked about certain things and what requirements we need to achieve, so that we are not just running from one side to the other, but that we actually know what's the goal that we need to reach, so that we have something which is making everybody happy. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But Anton, I would appreciate if you stay onto that topic and if you tell us if you have overlooked something or if you have missed something, so that we don't forget.
Yeah, okay, we can discuss this offline. I don't think that we need to dive into this right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, could be a simple thing also related to testing some kind of exotic backend. When we do that, we should describe how to take out a production worker instance for testing backend changes, so that you have like an individual worker instance which we can use for testing backends before we deploy it everywhere. So it's kind of a or you could also say this is kind of a canary deployment where you have a small percentage of the infrastructure already running a change before we roll it out to the complete infrastructure. Then we did introduce TPM support, the software TPM, SWTPM, and yeah, I've been rerunning that on some machines and on AH64. Surprisingly, there were some problems where this doesn't work expected, so looking into that. Yeah, related to security, because we just brought up the topic, there's also this task, what to research what are the best practices and options in Salt and GitLab community to handle secrets. So we already have something like Salt States repository, which is public. It's even on GitHub. And we have a pillars repository where we have credentials, and that one is limited in access. And before we extend on that principle, we should research like what are the best practices that we don't need to roll our own unnecessarily. Anton?
You said you have a project which just have limited access, but credentials are there in plain text, or is there encrypted, or?
Yeah, so in the Salt Pillars repository, we have credentials in plain text, but you need to have access to the repository. Yes. I mean, you have access to the repository, right?
Yeah, so I know. Yeah, but do you have some plans to introduce some encryption? Because we are currently trying to solve the same problem, and I know that OpenSUSE Heroes have something in place, but
yeah. So yes, in general, we have a plan to improve security. I don't know if we really want to encrypt like complete files or if we include individual things there. For example, I just recently learned from our team colleague Jan Bayer. He taught me how to use Ansible. Previously, I did not have that much experience with Ansible, including the use of the Ansible vault. So there, what's done there is that you have some kind of, you have variables with a template, and something like secret goes here, right? And then only the secret is filled from another file, and the other file only includes a really simple key value storage, and that file is encrypted with, and you can edit this file with Ansible Vault, and then afterwards you commit it to the same Git repository. Pavel?
Yeah, I have two remarks. Well, first of all, the repository with all of these plain text credentials is not private, it's internal.
Yes.
So everyone logged into our GitLab have access to that.
That's correct. Every authenticated user of that instance can access that.
Yeah. Well, and second of all, I think that there is no need to change from Salt to Ansible, as that would be probably more work. But Salt has, and that's what the infra people use. Salt has support for PGP keys.
Right.
So it's yeah. I think that's the solution.
Thank you. I think this is a sensible choice. Of course, no, we don't want to exchange Salt with Vault just for the sake of it. It's possible to use GPG encryption in combination with Salt. The question is just like, should we, in the process of doing that, like, should we encrypt the complete file, just a part of that? Should we extract it into another file, maybe a different repository? For example, the IPMI credentials, they had been added of as convenience, but they are not necessary for the Salt pillars. So yeah, before we're doing that, we could move the IPMI credentials elsewhere. All right. Again, 2 more stories regarding testing backend, which are non-chemo backend, so local SVR testing instruction, as well as cover manual testing steps, especially for exotic backends. One OpenQA review story, we have discussed this no reminder option. This one here is about that we could, in the reminder comments, point to more specific steps. Currently, we have a link to the OpenQA test, but sometimes it's better to point to the specific thumbnail or the text which can explain like why we have that reminder. So that's an option, or that's a change that we propose. Okay, so with this we have covered the plan for the next days, weeks, and months within our backlog. And now let's open it up for more ideas or feedback from your side. What do you think? What tasks do you like? Which one you don't like? Is there something that you see missing, or something that you like that it's on there? Tell us. If not, we can look to the next week, and we can look to the next topics which we can expect. So the next week, sorry, forgive me for messing up the format here. And next week should be about more details in OS audience backends, how to check availability of SSH and other services. I would be really happy if some experts can help me there. So, because you suggested this, so what do you think? Who should be a good candidate to lead this topic, and why are your expectations? How about that?
Yeah, so I think it would be great if it can be a bit of an open conversation where maybe people compare ideas on their approaches. So this touches things like what are needles used for to match, for instance, updates on the state of the machine under test, or how the state of OpenSSH services or similar things are being checked, and how to check them, like timeouts, for example, waiting on something, or since this is also a part of the original case, how do you know if something went wrong or how it went wrong? So some of the needles, for instance, I was looking at, don't seem even related to the case. It'd be interesting to see if maybe other people have found similar cases where where you have ideas on how to avoid the confusion from looking at the wrong things when you actually just want to know that the connection works properly, for instance.
Yeah, Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's find some examples next time. Of course, that differs per backend, it differs per different services, and then see what we can brainstorm together. This also brought me to an idea of further topics that we can do. So, for example, yeah, we already had from this yearly workshop review about backends and more OpenKA internals. What I think we could do is individual sessions of the workshop, and each session should be about one backend. And we look through I would conduct an actual code walkthrough within OS audience, and based on the code, so this will be a deep dive, but based on the code, we can then learn how it behaves, what are the requirements, hopefully even come up with some ideas of how to improve. And then we can relate examples of tests to that. And by that, we learn about each individual backend and its peculiarities. What do you think about that? And then what I think about that. Okay, cool. So with this, let's conclude this workshop. Thank you all. See you again next week. Bye.